And I remember when I moved here in 2008, we went below 1,000 dairy farms for the first time. So to be less than half of that now feels a little alarming.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Across the Fence. I'm Jolie Whitney. 1 year ago, February of 2024, there was a total of 486 dairy farms in Vermont. As of last month, that number is 441. If that sounds troubling, consider this. Vermont dairy farmers and the cows they manage made more milk in 2024 than ever before, and will likely make more milk in 2025. To help understand what these numbers mean and give us an outlook on Vermont's dairy industry in the coming year, we've invited Whitney Hull to join us. She's become part of UVM Extension's Dairy Herd Management Technical Assistance Team in 2021, and she provides one-on-one technical assistance to Vermont's dairy farmers. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
We're happy to have you. And first, we kind of said 441. When you hear that number, what does that mean to you?
So that means there are currently 441 dairy farms shipping milk in the state. That number can sometimes be a little bit inflated because it does include farms that only ship raw milk but are inspected by the State Agency of Ag.
And I'm sure you hear this from a lot of older Vermonters, but there used to be many more dairy cows in the state. So is it reasonable nowadays to expect less return on that number?
I mean, I remember when I moved here in 2008, we went below 1,000 dairy farms for the first time. So to be less than half of that now feels a little alarming. But I think we're seeing dairy farms that are consolidating, dairy farms that are becoming more efficient, that are adopting automated technology. So I think it's a really exciting time for dairy farms in Vermont, even though that number seems a lot less than some people might be used to.
Yeah, so it's not expected to go back up to 1,000, like you said.
No, I don't think we're going to see dairy farms increase that significantly. But, you know, we do have dairy farms that are beginning in the state, that are starting up as dairies for the first time, or they're farms that have been out of business and maybe are under new ownership. So while it does seem like a little bit of doom and gloom when you look at just the numbers, there are a lot of things to be excited about in the dairy industry in Vermont.
Sure. And does that total number include organic dairy farms as well?
It does, yeah.
Okay. And the number of dairy farms has been declining for a while, which we've already talked about a lot. But do you think that's going to stabilize at some point? It feels like something the people in the dairy industry have been waiting for that number to level off.
I think at some point we're going to reach a number of dairy farms where it's going to settle out for a while, and then, you know, we'll probably go through a change again. But I think we're going to come in the next, 5 or 10 years to sort of a number that is manageable and sustainable for a longer period of time. I don't know what that number will be, but I think we're going to continue to have dairy farms in the state, so not to worry.
Sure. So a lower number of farms, but we've already said more milk, which is impressive. So do you think that comes down to technology, management? Are the cows better? What's attributing that?
Yeah, all of it, really. Vermont dairy farmers have done a really good job of becoming more efficient with what they have. So whether that's growing better forages to feed their cows a better diet in order to make more milk, adopting technologies like maybe automated milking systems or milking robots that harvest the milk instead of a human to increase their labor efficiencies. And yeah, we've also bred cows genetically to produce more milk. So we're selecting for traits that favor milk production.
Are you seeing the same trends of fewer farms but higher milk production from organic dairy farms as well?
No, not quite as much. Organic still tends to be a little bit more varied. There are still farms that are focusing on just grass-based production. So they're not feeding grain, and they might make a little bit less milk, but they're paid a higher price for that milk. So that's a different type of management from, say, what we would consider a larger organic farm in the state, which would probably be a couple hundred cows. But there's quite a varied management style among organic farms, from grass-based all the way to automated milking systems. So they tend to be more varied than just a traditional conventional farm where you might have people milking in tie stalls, people milking in parlors, and people milking with robots. And, of course, conventional farms pasture their animals as well. So there's quite a bit of variation in management among Vermont's dairy farms.
And you put out a newsletter, I believe Monthly. So what are you looking forward to for this year?
I'm really excited about the new processors that we have coming online in Vermont. So we're seeing the shift towards more farms in Vermont starting to make a value-added product, and whether that's on their own farm, whether they're co-packing with other people that are already doing that. So that's really exciting to me, is that we have farmers that are starting to try to take a little bit more control over the product they produce and how their product gets priced. So that's been something really exciting to watch grow over the past few years, is this energy around making a value-added product and getting to market it and getting to see people kind of try that product for the first time and embrace it. It's exciting to me.
For somebody in the dairy industry, it must be pretty clear what a value-added product is, but for someone like me who doesn't know as much, what's an example of that?
So cheese is a great example, or we have folks bottling their own milk, making ice cream, yogurt, all kinds of different dairy products. Kind of, you think of it, somebody in Vermont is likely making it.
That's great. And if we were talking a lot about the dairy industry itself, but a lot of people are thinking about their own grocery bills. So is the price of milk expected to stay the same?
I think consumers will likely see the price of milk stay mostly the same in stores. There tends to be like a little bit of a gap between what the farmers are paid for their milk and then what consumers pay in the stores. So even if a consumer sees the price go up significantly, that doesn't always translate back to the dairy farmer, because there's a whole supply and distribution chain kind of in the middle of that. So that's a large push why some farmers have started to make bottle their own milk or make cheese or ice cream or another value-added product, is to try to get some of that margin back on their own farm and have a little bit more control about the price that they're paid for the product that they're making.
Sure. So are farmers' returns looking about as level as they are for the consumer?
I think we're going to see milk prices hopefully stay pretty stable throughout 2025. A lot of that depends on the price of grain and other input costs for farmers, which, are still a little bit up in the air at this point. But hopefully we'll see milk prices that are slightly higher than 2024 and mostly stable throughout the year. But that, is always kind of an unknown factor.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't ask you to predict the future. And when we're talking about groceries, one price that we've seen go up a lot is eggs, and that's because of avian flu, but that's impacted the cattle industry as well. So is that something that's kind of on your radar this year? Is that something you've been keeping in mind?
Yeah, for sure. I think everybody in the dairy industry has sort of been paying attention to that over the past year. Vermont is doing bulk tank milk sampling to monitor that, to make sure that we don't have it. It hasn't been detected yet, so we're all keeping our fingers crossed that it stays away. But yeah, it's definitely something that we're all thinking about. There was a second case of a herd infected for a second time with a novel strain, so that's a little bit alarming to all of us that kind of work in that biosecurity field. But yeah, for farms, just keep practicing those good biosecurity practices you've been doing, and we keep our fingers crossed that it doesn't make its way to Vermont.
Sure, and it seems like it's been pretty far away so far, but is it something that Vermont farmers you've spoken with are worried about?
It's not the biggest threat at this point to them, but yeah, it's definitely something that I think people think about a little bit. I mean, we're only 5 years post-COVID, so kind of thinking about another pandemic seems like a little bit too soon for one. But yeah, farmers in Vermont that I've talked to have not been overly concerned, but they are participating in the bulk tank milk sampling, and they're aware of the issue and kind of being more thoughtful if they purchase cows, where those cows might be coming from or how they're moving animals around the state or out of the state.
Sure. And if avian flu isn't on their top list of concerns, what are they worried about from what you've spoken with them?
I mean, milk price is always the number one concern when you go on a farm. Everybody's looking to, keep that milk price high. Input costs, a lot of farmers are trying to really think a little bit more thoughtfully about how they control those input costs on their farm, whether that's increasing the amount of forage and decreasing the amount of grain, trying some different management strategies, adopting different technologies. We're always kind of trying to think, how can we lower that input cost so that we can maximize the amount of margin that they have.
And I'm sure some of this is going to be addressed at the Vermont Dairy Producers Conference, which you're actually off to right after this.
Yeah.
But is there anything that really stands out from the conference this year?
Yeah, we're starting to talk a lot about carbon credits and about reducing methane emissions on farms. I mean, that's been a hot topic for a few years now, but there are feed additives coming out now that are looking to sort of address the methane emissions from dairy cows, which is really interesting. The technology and the science is very cool. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that.
And let's talk quickly about the Northeast Dairy Business Innovation Center. They have some grants that are focusing on projects that kind of updated some outdated systems and innovation solutions.
Yeah, so one grant is due this Thursday. That's called the Improvement and Modernization Grant. So that's sort of for farms that are looking to update something in the barn. It might be installing robotic manure scrapers or a robotic feed pusher. Adopting some type of new practice or technology is really what they're looking to do and fund with that grant. Another grant is the food safety grant. So that's for both value-added producers and dairy producers that just ship fluid milk. And that's just sort of focus on the food safety piece of things and really make sure that protocols are up to where they should be if you're making a value-added product. And then there's a co-packing grant as well. So that's for current value-added producers that are maybe interested in partnering with another value-added producer to help them produce that product. So there's always a lot of exciting grants coming out of the New England Dairy Business Innovation Center.
Sure, and are these like a game changer for farmers? Can these be make or break for them?
Yeah, they can be huge for farmers, especially a farm that might be interested in trying something that otherwise would be cost prohibitive, or if they're looking to get into value added, that can be a huge bonus for them to be able to have access to funds that allow them to do something without taking on a lot of debt. So it's a little bit lower risk for a huge investment and a huge reward.
And we're almost out of time, but I want to mention quickly the Vermont Dairy Farm of the Year Award. When do you guys start accepting applications for that?
Yeah, so applications will will open in March and they'll close May 1st. And we're looking for anybody to nominate dairy farms that they think might be good candidates for Vermont's Dairy Farm of the Year.
All right, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And to sign up for Whitney's monthly dairy updates, you can sign up at the website on your screen. And that takes care of our show for today. My thanks to the crew behind the scenes here who always keep our show on time and moving. I'm Whitney. This is Across the Fence. Have a good one.